So here's something a little bit different outside of the regular mushroom stuff. Over here, we are installing what's called a hugelkultur. Basically, what a hugelkultur is we're working with wood in various different densities at various different stages of decomposition. All you want to do is you want to shy away from putting too much green, like super green wood. It's ideal if it's dead and it's been sat for at least a year. And some of the stuff that's even more rotted and decayed is really good too. You want different densities, different stages of decay. And we're going to take this wood and we're going to bury it in this hole. Now, you don't have to dig a hole. You can build these things on the surface. You don't have to till. And I'm not a big fan of tilling in most circumstances. I don't like to till the soil. I don't like to disturb the microbiome underneath there. But for the purpose of this, the purpose of this location, I think it's the right thing to do. Also, one of the benefits that you get when you dig a hole is that you get a bunch of soil to work with. So you need less bags of fertilizer or compost or exogenous soil coming from some other place, right? So we're going to use all of that. And basically, once I'll layer some of the bigger pieces down there, and I'm going to lasagna. I'm going to use the lasagna method. I'm just going to take layer of hay, layer of soil. What I'll probably do is just pick one of these sods up and shake it out across. And then we got bags of compost over. Well, there's only one there, but we got a bunch of bags of compost. I've had extremely good results with hugelkulturs. Like one year we just took everything in our cupboard that we were never going to eat. I'll open all the dried food and all the cans. We're like, I'm never going to eat this crap. And we just opened it all and made a lasagna out of it in the garden with a little bit of soil, a whole bunch of straw, and we planted tomatoes in there. Heck, I think some of the tomato plants that we got might not have even been, they might have just been from the stuff we put in, but we got crazy tomato crops, like 8 feet tall. Some of them were about 8 feet tall. We couldn't even harvest them. They went so high. So this is a really effective way to get really good soil in a garden year one. Like if you add a couple bags of compost and some of the soil that's there, year one, you're going to do pretty well. But the cool thing about this method is that over the course of time, year two, as the wood decays, it's providing food for various different microorganisms in the microbiome underneath the soil. It's providing fertilizer for the plants, and it also begins to retain moisture. And that's why it's important you get some big chunks in there, because they soak up moisture like a sponge as they decay. And what I've seen is in about 2 to 3 years, your hugelkulturs do not need to be irrigated. If you're in an extremely arid environment, maybe you have to irrigate them now and then. But I think that by the third year we were on one of our big projects, we watered them twice in the entire season. And they were not thirsty at all. They had so much moisture stored in the ground. And that's the best place to store water, is down on the ground, which is why the no-till method makes a lot of sense. Digging swales next to your hugelkulturs really makes a difference too. What we did was we dug a 1/2-foot trench alongside it, filled it with gravel, and filled that with hay and sand, and then that becomes like a funnel that takes surface moisture as it rains, and it sticks it down into the ground underneath. It soaks down in there like you want it to be. So that's what's up here, and we're probably going to grow some scarlet runner beans, some squash, some basil and tomatoes in here. Maybe some other things too, probably some chives and some other herbs. So we don't get a lot of sun here. We have a beautiful home, but there's so many trees. This tree's taken a beating over the last couple of years, but this used to just block out the sun. And then as you can see, we've got this big birch, and the top of that maple still takes a lot of the sun off. Now that this limb fell off, there was a limb there that fell on our house a while ago. We actually get some of the late day sun, which is nice. But this birch blocks a little bit out. So we're looking at taking off a couple of these limbs and turning them into mushroom logs, so we get a little bit more sun. And then this is going to be here, and then across there is the sunniest spot, because this is south facing. So the sun rises there and it sets over there. Our backyard isn't too sunny, so that's okay. That's actually great for low shade crops like lettuces and kales and other leafy greens, but it's also really, really good for our mushrooms. In direct sunlight is not a great place for our mushrooms. So the front yard is probably a better spot for us to do a bunch of our vegetables in. And yeah, so we can come along there, and then we can do some work along here. And as we get over here into the shadiest part, like the sun's going to come through a little bit right here, right? As the sun goes through there, it's going to come down on this area here. But this spot over here is real nice and shady. And so we're looking at this as another spot for a couple of mushroom cages. And we have this area over here is really sort of, this is an ideal spot for many reasons to store logs just leaned along the house like shiitake logs. You could lean them all the way across and grow shiitakes here, and there's lots and lots of shade. When it rains, the moisture comes down. The moisture's going to come out. Some of it's going to come, well, I guess it goes out there. But yeah, we're going to end up with a lot of shade here, and this is a great space, I think, to lay a whole bunch of shiitake logs next to the house. But yeah, that's what's up. This is the yard we're working at. This branch too, I think at some point, I mean, it's going over there into the power wires. This tree's pretty mashed up. At some point we might cut this, and if we do, we'll turn it into another mushroom another mushroom log. So that's what's up in the garden here today, and things are coming along. We turned some of the mycelium earlier. We turned some of the straw beds to take a look and see how the mycelium is growing under there, and we're actually getting pretty good colonization happening. The one thing I'm concerned about is excess moisture. I want to keep these beds wet enough. Oh, this is a thingy I designed. I'll do a whole video about this. But this is so that we can inoculate large quantities of substrate, and using like a spawn bag, and then we use this to pasteurize, and then we can tip it to drain it. So we've got pasteurized straw in there. We're using a lime bath right now, but there's a bunch of different ways you could do it. So we do a lime bath, and we tip the thing to the barrel to drain it. And then what I've done is I've put these micropore tapes over here, so this breathes. This is to an extent, this is getting oxygenated. And as the mycelium grow and start generating carbon, it's going to be able to exchange carbon and oxygen. So that's what's up. This is a thing I built. Anyway, the challenge I was looking at is some of these beds here. When we first picked up some, old pieces of wood, some, like old skids from factories and things like that. And we thought we'd just lay it down and put it on top of that. But when we broke it up, and after soaking it a few times, I'm realizing this environment is not breathing well enough, and I'm concerned about the possibility of anaerobic bacteria growing. So what I've been doing to mitigate that is just some days I don't water it, and then I'll come out with a pitchfork and I'll turn it a little bit. And that might disturb the mycelium, but it'll also spread it. And most importantly, I think it's going to keep it aerobic instead of anaerobic. But this was the idea that led me to invent this cage system that we're developing. I realized that's going to be a problem. Because we're not fruiting in some kind of a controlled environment out here in the yard, the elements fluctuate, and that's going to create positive. There's pros and cons to that, right? So we developed these things here. So this is just a bunch of chicken wire strapped to some poles, and then we're going to we're going to put those cages around these skids that we put the chicken wire on. So that's going to do is it's going to stop the straw from going right down to the ground, or whatever substrate we use. I'm looking at leaning towards a straw and wood chip combination. That's for later though. But we've got this, and then we wrap the cage around the outside, fill it with substrate, and then the stack goes up. It's easier to cover during colonization. And air flows. We get oxygen flowing through, and we get oxygen flowing all around, which is going to help the stacks. I'm just calling them the stacks or the columns right now, but it's going to help this application drain. So there's not good drainage on the other beds when you just pile up a bunch of straw, and that is going to run the risk of creating anaerobic conditions and bacterial contamination, which you don't want. You don't want bacterial contamination. It's going to kill, even if you get mushrooms out of a culture that's contaminated with bacteria, it's going to decrease the lifespan of it. It's going to make your mushrooms less healthy. So this is the goal, that we're going to hopefully achieve that result of controlling our outdoor environment to the extent that we can manage the most important contamination vectors and the most important variables, but not trying to make it like a lab situation. As much as I love, I think it's so cool, all the lab work that people are doing, I am more interested in permaculture and being outdoors and being in nature. And I'm not doing my own sterile tissue culture yet. I will at some point when we have a facility, but that's the nice thing about this world. Look at these guys. We got a bunch of trilliums coming up. That's what's up, is I don't want to be in a lab. I want to be out in the forest, and I want to be out in my garden. And there's a way that you can there's a way that you can grow mushrooms that that suits your lifestyle. Like, you could just do the buckets. You could do 3 to 5 gallon buckets, and that could live on your kitchen counter. You can just buy the grow your own mushroom kits, which are basically fruiting blocks, or basically like spawn bags. So like, I don't like the idea of trying to grow my mushrooms off of a spawn bag or a fruiting block that I purchased, because that's a business model for somebody else. That's a business model for somebody else. It's profit for them and it's cost for me. So, not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, that's cool if that's somebody's business model. There are plenty of people who want to grow off of, who just want to grow some mushrooms on their counter in their kitchen, as a hobby, or just, now and then for something to eat. And you're still liable to get a better deal than if you just bought your mushrooms from the store. You'll definitely get fresher mushrooms, but I want to make lots and lots and lots of mushrooms and sell them. So that's where I'm at, is I'd love to do it outside in the garden. We're sort of bridging the gap between totally rustic and innovating. But we're not in a lab here. So we're not in a lab. We don't have a facility. And so I'm out here innovating ways that we can grow lots and lots and lots of mushrooms in a low-tech, lo-fi manner, where we don't have to be super duper sterile and don't have to have super duper tight procedures. That's what's up. So this is the coolest experiment. This so far was like an aha moment for me. I feel kind of proud of myself, actually, for coming up with this. And I'll make a whole video about this at some point.